The stars looked different from Jupiter orbit. Captain James Walker stood at the main viewport of the HSS Defiant, watching the massive gas giants whirling storms below. His weathered hands clasped behind his back, knuckles white with tension. 20 years of space combat experience told him these might be humanity's final hours. The Defiant's bridge crew worked in tense silence, broken only by the soft beeping of sensor equipment and quiet status reports. They all knew what was coming. The Dominion's main fleet had just passed Saturn's orbit, over 10,000 warships strong. Against them stood the last 300 ships of the human fleet, gathered here in humanity's last stand. "Status report on the resonance cascade system," Walker called out, his voice steady despite the weight pressing down on his shoulders. The experimental weapon was their only hope, their last chance to prove that humanity wouldn't go quietly into the night. "Integration at 68%, Captain," replied Lieutenant Rogers from her engineering station. "Chief Miller says he needs at least 2 more hours before the system will be combat ready." Walker nodded, knowing they wouldn't have 2 hours. The Dominion fleet was pushing their engines hard, eager to finish what they'd started 3 years ago when they first attacked Earth's colonies. Since then, it had been a steady retreat, watching human worlds fall one by one to the alien superior technology. But the Defiant was different. She was humanity's newest warship, built with technology reverse-engineered from crashed Dominion vessels. More importantly, she carried the results of Project Thunderbolt, a weapon that could theoretically exploit a fundamental weakness in Dominion shield systems. If it worked, it would change everything. If it failed, humanity would join the long list of civilizations the Dominion had crushed beneath their boots. "Captain," called out Jones from the sensor station, his young face pale in the blue glow of his screens. Long-range scans picking up something strange. "The Dominion fleet, they're splitting up." Walker strode to the sensor station, studying the tactical display. The massive red blob representing the Dominion fleet was indeed separating into 3 distinct groups. It was a departure from their usual tactics of overwhelming force. "They're being cautious," Walker muttered, more to himself than the crew. "They know about the Defiant. They know we've built something new." The realization hit him like a physical blow. If the Dominion was showing caution, it meant their spies had learned about Project Thunderbolt. They didn't know exactly what it did, but they knew it was dangerous enough to change their standard tactics. "Send word to Admiral Stone," Walker ordered. "The Dominion knows about the Defiant. They'll try to take us out first." He paused, considering their options. "And get me Chief Miller. Now." Minutes later, the chief engineer's gruff voice came through the bridge speakers. "Miller here, Captain. We're working as fast as we can, but rushing the integration could blow us all to hell." "We don't have a choice, Tom," Walker replied, using the engineer's first name, something he rarely did. "The Dominion is coming for us specifically. How close to their ships do we need to be for the resonance cascade to work?" There was a long pause. "Theoretically, no more than 50,000 kilometers. But, Captain, the equations we're working with, they're more complex than anything humanity has ever attempted. We're talking about manipulating quantum fields in ways that shouldn't be possible." "That's why they'll never see it coming," Walker said. "Keep working. We'll buy you all the time we can." He turned to his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Reed, plot a course deeper into Jupiter's gravity well. We'll use the radiation belts to mask our energy signature." The massive warship turned gracefully, its dark hull gleaming in Jupiter's reflected sunlight. The Defiant was beautiful in a functional way, sleek yet powerful, with none of the ornate designs the Dominion favored. She was built for one purpose: to fight back. As they descended toward Jupiter's upper atmosphere, Walker received a priority message from Admiral Stone. The old admiral's face appeared on his private screen, looking even more tired than Walker felt. "Jim, our long-range scouts just reported in. The Dominion fleet isn't just being led by any commander. The Supreme Commander himself is heading this operation. His flagship has been confirmed among the approaching forces. Walker's jaw tightened. The Supreme Commander was notorious for his hatred of humanity, viewing them as uppity primitives who needed to be taught their place in the galaxy. He'd personally overseen the destruction of Mars colony, broadcasting the deaths of 2 million colonists as a warning to Earth. Understood, Admiral. Request permission to engage the Supreme Commander's group directly once the resonance cascade is ready. Stone's expression was grim. Granted. But Jim, if this doesn't work, if the Defiant falls, I'm ordering the rest of the fleet to make a run for deep space. We'll scatter to the stars, preserve what's left of our species. It won't come to that, Walker said with more confidence than he felt. The Defiant will prove what humanity is capable of. We'll show them that underestimating us was their biggest mistake. The Admiral nodded slowly. Good hunting, Captain. Stone out. Walker turned back to his crew, seeing the same mix of fear and determination on every face. They'd all lost someone to the Dominion. Friends, family, entire communities, gone because an alien empire decided humanity didn't deserve to exist among the stars. All hands, this is the captain, he announced shipwide. In less than an hour, we'll engage the largest Dominion fleet ever assembled. They think they know what we're capable of. They think they can predict our every move. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show them that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our ability to do the impossible when our backs are against the wall. He paused, watching Jupiter's massive form fill more of their viewport. Every human who has fallen to the Dominion, every colony they've burned, every life they've taken, it all comes down to this moment. We carry humanity's hopes with us. Remember that. Walker out. The bridge fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by something stronger. Purpose. Contact. Jones called out suddenly. Multiple Dominion warships entering detection range. They're moving to surround our position. Walker smiled grimly. Let them come. Let them think they had the Defiant trapped against Jupiter's gravity well. They didn't understand what humanity had achieved, how their relentless attacks had pushed human innovation to heights never before imagined. Chief Miller, he called over the comm. Time's up. Is the resonance cascade ready? Not quite, came the reply, accompanied by the sound of frantic activity. But it's as ready as it's going to be. We'll have one shot at this, Captain. If the calculations are wrong. They're not wrong, Walker said firmly. Because they can't be. All hands. Battle stations. Humanity's future begins now. The Defiant's engines hummed to life, her revolutionary design allowing her to move in ways that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Above them, the first wave of Dominion warships began their attack run, their purple-tinted shields glowing with deadly promise. The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin, and one human warship was about to change everything. Deep in the engineering section of the HSS Defiant, Chief Engineer Tom Miller wiped sweat from his forehead as he studied the pulsing core of the resonance cascade system. The experimental weapon looked deceptively simple, a sphere of crystalline material surrounded by rings of spinning quantum sensors, but its simplicity was an illusion. Inside that sphere, laws of physics were being bent in ways that would have seemed impossible just 3 years ago. Chief, called out one of his engineers, pointing to a screen filled with rapidly changing numbers. The containment field is fluctuating again. We're seeing microfractures in the quantum matrix. Miller rushed to the console, his experienced eyes scanning the data streams. The Dominion's attack on Mars had killed his wife and daughter, but it had also given humanity its first real look at their shield technology. The aliens used quantum fields to create their supposedly impenetrable defenses. Now, humanity would use that same science against them. Reroute power from secondary systems, Miller ordered, his fingers flying across the control panel. And get me a direct line to the bridge. Captain needs to know what we're dealing with. The ship shuddered as the first wave of Dominion weapons fire struck their shields. The Defiant's revolutionary design absorbed the impact better than any previous human vessel, but they couldn't take sustained fire for long. "Bridge, this is engineering," Miller called out. "Captain, we've got a problem. The resonance cascade is stable, but barely. Using it at anything less than optimal power could tear us apart." On the bridge, Captain Walker gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. Through the main viewport, he could see dozens of Dominion warships moving into attack position. Their purple-tinted shields created an ethereal glow against Jupiter's swirling storms. "Define tear us apart, Chief," Walker replied, keeping his voice steady for the crew's benefit. "Are we talking about damage or complete destruction?" "Complete molecular dissociation," Miller answered grimly. "The quantum fields we're generating. They're like nothing we've ever seen. One wrong move and we'll create a cascade failure that'll make an antimatter explosion look like a firecracker." Walker absorbed this information as he watched more Dominion ships appear from hyperspace. They were taking no chances, committing overwhelming force to destroy the Defiant before she could use her mysterious new weapon. "Lieutenant Reed," Walker called to his tactical officer, "bring us about. Plot a course between those two heavy cruisers. Let's show them what this ship can do." The Defiant moved with impossible grace for a vessel her size. The inertial dampeners Miller had designed allowed maneuvers that Dominion tactical computers classified as physically impossible. They expected human ships to move like lumbering beasts. The Defiant danced. "Multiple targeting locks," Jones shouted from his sensor station. "They're coordinating their fire." "Evasive pattern Delta," Walker ordered. "Chief Miller, what do you need to get that weapon ready?" "Time and power," Miller replied through gritted teeth. "The quantum matrix needs to be perfectly aligned. Rush it, and we'll have more than just the Dominion to worry about." The ship's AI displayed possible escape routes on the tactical screen, but Walker saw they were running out of options. The Dominion was hurting them, using their superior numbers to force the Defiant into a vulnerable position. Suddenly, a new signal caught everyone's attention. A massive ship dropped out of hyperspace, easily 3 times the size of a standard Dominion cruiser. Its hull was decorated with intricate patterns of pulsing light, marking it as the Supreme Commander's flagship. "All hands, brace for impact," Walker shouted as the flagship's main weapon charged up. The beam that struck the Defiant was more powerful than anything they'd encountered before. Shields flared bright enough to blind the bridge crew momentarily. "Shields at 40%, Rogers reported, her fingers dancing across her console to reroute emergency power. "One more hit like that, and we're done." In engineering, Miller watched in horror as the quantum matrix began to destabilize. The massive energy surge from the hit had affected the delicate calibrations they'd spent hours perfecting. But as he studied the readings, something caught his eye. "Captain," he called out, excitement creeping into his voice. "That hit, it showed us something. The frequency of their main weapon. It's operating on the same quantum principles as their shields. If we can match that frequency," Walker understood immediately, "we can use their own weapon's energy to power the resonance cascade." "Exactly," Miller confirmed. "But we'll need to get hit again, and this time we need to be ready for it. I'm going to modify the shield harmonics to channel the energy directly into the quantum matrix." It was an insane plan. The kind of desperate gamble that only humans would attempt. Any other species would consider it suicide to deliberately take a hit from the most powerful weapon in the Dominion fleet. "How close do we need to be?" Walker asked, already formulating a plan. "Point-blank range," Miller replied. "Their weapon's energy disperses over distance. We need to take the hit at less than 10 kilometers to capture enough power." Walker looked at his bridge crew. They didn't need to speak. Every human on board knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about showing the galaxy that humanity would never submit, never accept defeat, even in the face of impossible odds. "All hands," Walker announced shipwide. Prepare for close quarters combat. Chief Miller, you'll get your power source. Lieutenant Reed, plot a direct course for the Supreme Commander's flagship. Let's introduce ourselves properly. The Defiant's engines roared to life, pushing the ship straight toward the massive alien vessel. Dominion ships scrambled to intercept, but the human warship's superior maneuverability allowed it to slip through their formation. They're charging their main weapon, Jones reported, his voice tense but controlled. Hold course, Walker ordered. Chief Miller, status of the quantum matrix. Recalibrated and ready, Miller replied. But Captain, if this doesn't work. It'll work, Walker cut him off. Because it has to. All hands, brace for impact in 3, 2, 1. The Supreme Commander's flagship fired, its beam of concentrated energy striking the Defiant head-on. The human warship's shields flared brilliantly, channeling the massive surge of power directly into the experimental weapon systems. In engineering, Miller watched in awe as the quantum matrix stabilized, powered by the very weapon meant to destroy them. The crystalline sphere at the heart of the resonance cascade began to pulse with an otherworldly light. Energy capture successful, he shouted over the comm. Quantum matrix is charged and stable. Captain, we're ready. On the bridge, Walker allowed himself a small smile. The Dominion had just given them exactly what they needed. Now it was time to show them humanity's response. All power to the resonance cascade, he ordered. Let's show them what happens when they push humanity too far. The experimental weapon began to power up, its energy readings climbing past anything human instruments were designed to measure. The fate of Earth, of all humanity, now rested on what would happen in the next few seconds. The space between the Defiant and the Supreme Commander's flagship crackled with energy. Lightning-like tendrils of quantum energy danced across the human warship's hull as the resonance cascade system reached full power. The weapon's distinctive hum echoed through every deck, a sound unlike anything ever heard on a human vessel before. Energy levels are off the charts, Miller reported from engineering, his voice tight with tension. The containment fields are holding, but just barely. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Walker watched as more Dominion ships moved to surround them. They were trapped between Jupiter's swirling storms below and the alien armada above. But for the first time since the war began, he saw something new in the Dominion's tactics. Hesitation. They're afraid, Lieutenant Reed said, voicing what everyone on the bridge had noticed. Look at their formation. They're keeping their distance. A harsh laugh echoed through the bridge speakers. It took everyone a moment to realize it was coming from the main communication channel. The Supreme Commander himself was hailing them. Brave little humans, the alien's voice dripped with contempt, translated by the ship's computers. Always so creative in your final moments. Did you think we wouldn't notice the energy readings from your vessel? Whatever weapon you've built, it cannot save you now. Walker signaled for the channel to be muted. Chief Miller, what's the status of the quantum field? It's stable, but different from our simulations, Miller replied. The energy we absorbed from their weapon. It's creating patterns we've never seen before. The quantum resonance is spreading faster than we predicted. Before Walker could respond, the ship's sensors blared a warning. The Dominion fleet was powering up their weapons. Not just the flagship this time. Every ship within range was preparing to fire. They're not taking chances anymore, Jones called from his station. Reading multiple targeting locks. They're going to hit us with everything they have. Walker's mind raced. The resonance cascade was ready, but they hadn't planned for this scenario. Their original strategy called for targeting the Supreme Commander's flagship first, using it as a proof of concept. But with the entire fleet preparing to fire. Chief Miller, he called out suddenly. The quantum resonance you mentioned, could it affect multiple ships at once? There was a pause as Miller ran the calculations. Theoretically, yes, the field would propagate through their shield frequencies. But Captain, we've never tested it at this scale. The energy requirements would be met by their own weapons, Walker finished. Just like before. but multiplied. Jones, how many ships are charging weapons? 217, sir. All within a 50,000-kilometer radius. Walker smiled. The Dominion's greatest strength, their overwhelming numbers and firepower, was about to become their greatest weakness. Chief Miller, prepare to channel all incoming energy directly into the resonance cascade. Lieutenant Reed, rotate our shield harmonics to match the frequency we recorded from their last attack. Sir. Reed looked uncertain. That would weaken our shields against their weapons. Exactly, Walker replied. We're not going to defend against their attack. We're going to absorb it. Understanding dawned on the bridge crew's faces. It was the kind of plan that made humans unique among the galaxy's species, using an enemy's strength against them in ways they'd never expect. The Supreme Commander's voice crackled through the speakers again. Your silence speaks volumes, humans. Know that your defeat will be remembered as the moment when your species finally learned its place in the universe. Walker reopened the channel. Actually, we were just doing some final calculations. But you're right about one thing. This moment will be remembered, just not the way you think. He closed the channel before the alien could respond. All hands braced for multiple impacts. Chief Miller, on my mark, activate the resonance cascade. Time seemed to slow as hundreds of energy weapons powered up across the Dominion fleet. Their purple-tinted shields pulsed in sync, creating a stunning display against the backdrop of Jupiter's storms. Enemy weapons at 90% charge, Jones reported. Hold position, Walker ordered. They needed the aliens to commit fully to their attack. 95%. In engineering, Miller's hands hovered over the resonance cascade controls. The quantum matrix was humming louder now, as if sensing what was coming. All ships, weapons locked. Steady. Walker gripped his chair as the Dominion fleet prepared to fire. Everything hinged on this moment. The space around the Defiant lit up as hundreds of energy beams struck simultaneously. The ship's shields flared brilliantly, absorbing rather than deflecting the massive energy surge. Warning alarms blared throughout the vessel as systems were pushed far beyond their designed limits. Now, Chief Miller, activate the cascade. Miller slammed his hand down on the activation panel. The crystalline sphere at the heart of the weapon pulsed once, twice, and then released a wave of quantum energy unlike anything ever seen in human space. The wave spread outward at near light speed, invisible except where it intersected with Dominion shields. There, it created a spectacular reaction. The aliens' purple barrier fields flickered, destabilized, and then collapsed completely as the quantum resonance disrupted their fundamental structure. It's working, Jones shouted, his professional demeanor cracking with excitement. Dominion shields are failing across the entire fleet. On the bridge of his flagship, the Supreme Commander watched in horror as his fleet's impenetrable defenses evaporated. The impossible had happened. The primitives had found a way to turn his own technology against him. The wave continued to spread, touching ship after ship. Without their shields, the Dominion vessels were far more vulnerable than human ships. They'd relied so heavily on their superior defenses that their hull armor was relatively light. Send word to Admiral Stone, Walker ordered. Tell the fleet to target any ship that's lost its shields. Focus on their engine sections first. The human fleet, which had been holding position at the edge of the battle, now surged forward. What had seemed like a hopeless last stand was transforming into humanity's first real chance at victory. Captain, Miller's voice came through the comm. The quantum matrix is still stable. We can fire again if needed. Walker looked at his tactical display. The Dominion fleet was in chaos. Ships were trying to retreat, but their formation had been too tight. They were colliding with each other in their panic to escape. Belay that, Chief, he replied. Save the power. I think we've made our point. The Supreme Commander's voice came through the comm one final time. But now the arrogance was gone. What? What have you done? We did exactly what humans always do, Walker answered calmly. We looked at something impossible, and then we found a way to do it anyway. Now shall we discuss the terms of your surrender? The battle wasn't over yet. Many Dominion ships still had weapons, and they were far from defenseless. But everything had changed. The myth of their invincibility had been shattered, and every ship in their fleet now knew that humanity had found a way to strip away their greatest advantage. The human warship that changed everything had lived up to its name. Now the real war could begin, not as predator versus prey, but as equals. The battle above Jupiter had transformed into something no one had ever seen before. Dominion ships, their once impenetrable shields stripped away, scattered in disarray. The human fleet pressed their advantage, but Walker knew the enemy was far from beaten. Cornered animals were often the most dangerous, and the Dominion fleet still outnumbered them greatly. Multiple energy spikes. Jones called from his sensor station. The Dominion ships are reconfiguring their weapons. They're increasing power output to compensate for lost shields. Through the Defiance viewport, Walker watched as the alien vessels began to regroup. The Supreme Commander's flagship remained at the center of their formation, but now smaller ships moved to surround it protectively. Without their shields, they would use their own ships as armor. Chief Miller, Walker called to engineering. Status of the resonance cascade. The system's stable, but cooling down, Miller replied between deep breaths. That pulse took more out of us than expected. We'll need at least 30 minutes before we can fire again. Walker nodded grimly. 30 minutes was an eternity in space combat. The Dominion wouldn't give them that much time. Already, their fleet was adopting new tactics, breaking into smaller groups that would be harder to hit with a single pulse. Captain, Lieutenant Rogers spoke up from her station. Admiral Stone is requesting instructions for the fleet. The Dominion ships are vulnerable, but they still have superior numbers and firepower. Before Walker could respond, the ship's sensors detected new movement. The Dominion fleet was launching fighters, thousands of them. Without their capital ship's shields to worry about, they could commit fully to an aggressive assault. They're changing tactics, Reed observed from tactical. Small, fast attacks from multiple directions. They're hoping to overwhelm us before we can fire the cascade again. Walker studied the tactical display, watching the swarm of enemy fighters approach. The Dominion was adapting faster than expected, turning what should have been their moment of triumph into a desperate race against time. Send word to the fleet, he ordered. Form defensive clusters. Use our point defense systems to cover each other. And get me Chief Miller again. The engineer's voice came through moments later, sounding exhausted but determined. Go ahead, Captain. Tom, I need options. The Dominion is switching to fighter swarms. Even without shields, they have enough ships to wear us down. Can we modify the resonance cascade for a shorter range, faster firing configuration? There was a pause filled with the sound of rapid typing. Maybe, Miller replied slowly. The quantum matrix is designed to generate a massive, expanding field. But if we narrow the focus, reduce the area of effect, we might be able to create something like a pulse cannon instead of a wave. How long? 20 minutes to reconfigure the emitters. But Captain, it would be much less powerful. We'd only affect ships within a few kilometers. Walker watched as the first wave of Dominion fighters began their attack run. Point defense lasers from the human fleet lit up space, destroying dozens of the smaller craft, but more kept coming. Do it, he ordered. We need something to even the odds. Lieutenant Reed, bring us about. We're going to show them that humans know how to adapt too. The Defiant turned gracefully, its advanced engines allowing maneuvers that other ships couldn't match. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, forming interlocking fields of fire that caught many fighters in deadly crossfire. But the Dominion had numbers on their side. For every fighter destroyed, 2 more took its place, and behind them, the larger ships were regrouping, preparing for a coordinated strike. Chief Miller reports the weapon modifications are at 40%, Rogers announced. But the Dominion fleet is moving to surround us. Heat signatures indicate they're charging weapons. The Supreme Commander's voice crackled through the comm system again. An impressive trick, humans, but not impressive enough. You've shown us your greatest weapon, and now we will show you why the Dominion has ruled space for 1,000 years. The alien fleet opened fire. Without their shields, they compensated with pure firepower. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes filled space, forcing the human ships into evasive maneuvers that broke up their defensive formation. Hull breach on Deck 4. Jones shouted as a shot struck home. Emergency force fields holding, but our armor won't take much more of this. Walker gripped his chair as another blast rocked the ship. The Defiant's revolutionary design was tough, but they were taking hits from dozens of ships at once. Around them, other human vessels were falling back, their hulls scared and burning from multiple impacts. 15 minutes to weapon reconfiguration, Rogers reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. We don't have 15 minutes, Reed responded, hands flying over his tactical console. The fighter swarms are pressing in from all sides. Our point defense grid is overloading. Walker watched as a human cruiser exploded under concentrated fire, its crew escaping in pods that the Dominion fighters casually destroyed. The sight sparked something in him, not just anger, but clarity. All power to engines, he ordered suddenly. Plot a course directly for the Supreme Commander's flagship. His bridge crew stared at him for a moment before understanding dawned. Without shields, the Dominion capital ships were relying on their fighters for protection, which meant they'll have to break off their attack to avoid hitting their own command ship. Reed finished the thought, already adjusting their course. The Defiant surged forward, its powerful engines pushing it through the swarm of fighters. As predicted, the smaller craft scattered to avoid collision with their flagship, creating a momentary gap in their attack. Chief Miller, Walker called out. Status. 10 more minutes. Miller shouted back over the sound of sparking electronics. The quantum matrix is realigning, but we're pushing the systems beyond safety limits. The Dominion isn't going to give us 10 minutes, Walker replied. We need that weapon now. Divert all non-essential power. Shut down everything we don't absolutely need. In engineering, Miller and his team worked frantically, pushing the experimental weapons systems to their absolute limit. Warning lights flashed across every console as they bypassed safety protocols and redlined power systems. The Defiant shuddered as more hits found their mark. Hull plating buckled, internal systems sparked and failed, but still they pressed on toward the Supreme Commander's massive vessel. 5 kilometers to target, Reed announced. The flagship is powering up its main gun. Chief Miller, Walker asked one final time. Not ready. Miller's voice was strained. The matrix isn't stable. If we fire now. If we don't fire, we're dead anyway. Walker cut him off. Do it, Chief. Trust in human engineering. Miller hesitated for just a moment, then slammed his hand down on the activation panel. The resonance cascade system hummed to life, but the sound was different now, higher pitched, almost screaming. The modified weapon fired, releasing not a wave, but a concentrated beam of quantum energy. It struck the Supreme Commander's flagship dead center, the focused power of the cascade tearing through the unshielded hull like paper. Secondary explosions rippled along the massive vessel's length as its power systems overloaded. The Dominion fighters broke formation, suddenly directionless without their command ship's guidance. But aboard the Defiant, celebrations would have to wait. The modified cascade had taken its toll on the ship's systems. Alarms blared throughout every deck as power fluctuations cascaded through the grid. Multiple system failures, Rogers reported. The quantum matrix is going critical. Walker looked out at the chaos they'd created. The burning Dominion flagship, the scattered fighter squadrons, the human fleet regrouping for another attack. They'd changed the course of the war, but at what cost? All hands, he announced shipwide. Brace for impact. This isn't over yet. The Defiant hung in space above Jupiter, its hull scared and burning from dozens of direct hits. Warning sirens blared through every deck as the modified resonance cascade system threatened to tear itself apart. But none of that mattered to the crew watching the Supreme Commander's flagship break apart. secondary explosions rippling along its length. Power systems critical. Miller's voice cracked through the comm. The quantum matrix is destabilizing. We need to shut it down now. Walker gripped his command chair as another tremor ran through the ship. Around them, the remains of the Dominion fleet hung in disarray, their fighters flying in confused patterns without central coordination. But he knew this moment of chaos wouldn't last long. "Status of the Supreme Commander's ship," he demanded. Jones worked his sensor console frantically. "Their main power core is going critical. Reading multiple escape pods launching. Sir, I'm detecting the Supreme Commander's personal transport among them." Walker leaned forward. The architect of humanity's near extinction was trying to escape. Part of him wanted to order the Defiant to pursue, to end this here and now. But another explosion rocked the ship, making the decision for him. "Chief Miller, shut down the cascade. All power to structural integrity and life support. Lieutenant Reed, get us clear of the flagship's blast radius." The Defiant's engines flared as they pulled away from the dying alien vessel. Behind them, the Supreme Commander's flagship finally succumbed to its wounds, exploding in a spectacular display that briefly rivaled Jupiter's brightness. "The blast is causing a chain reaction in the quantum fields," Miller reported. "It's affecting all nearby Dominion ships that were exposed to the cascade." Through the viewport, Walker watched as ship after ship lost power, their systems overloaded by the quantum backwash from their commander's destruction. What had started as a desperate gamble had turned into a devastating blow against the supposedly invincible Dominion fleet. "Sir," Rogers called out, "incoming transmission from Admiral Stone. The remaining Dominion capital ships are retreating. Their fighter screen is withdrawing to cover their escape." A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Walker raised his hand for silence. "Chief Miller, what's the status of our ship?" There was a long pause before the engineer replied. "Not good, Captain. The modified cascade burned out most of our power conduits. We're running on emergency systems, and those won't last long. But sir, you need to see these readings. The quantum field effects we created, they're still spreading." Walker frowned. "Spreading how?" "It's like a ripple in space-time," Miller explained, his voice filled with wonder despite their situation. "The cascade didn't just disable their shields. It created a persistent effect that's propagating through subspace. Any Dominion ship that tries to raise shields within this region of space will have them fail immediately." The implications hit Walker like a physical blow. They hadn't just won a battle. They'd created a weapon that could deny the Dominion their greatest advantage across an entire sector of space. "Admiral Stone is requesting all ships report in," Rogers announced. "The human fleet took heavy losses, but we're still combat effective. 16 ships reporting major damage, 12 destroyed." Walker closed his eyes briefly, honoring the sacrifices made. When he opened them, his voice was firm. "Send word to the fleet. The Dominion will be back, and in greater numbers. But now, they know we can hurt them. More importantly, they know we can adapt." The next few hours passed in a blur of damage control and rescue operations. The human fleet worked together to recover escape pods and salvage what they could from the battlefield. The Defiant, despite its critical condition, became a symbol of hope as news of its achievement spread through the surviving ships. 3 days later, Walker stood in a hastily assembled conference room on Europa Base, Earth's last remaining outpost in the Jupiter system. Admiral Stone and the other fleet commanders had gathered to discuss the battle's implications. "The resonance cascade effect is still expanding," Miller explained to the assembled officers, his uniform wrinkled from endless hours of analysis. "Our best estimates suggest it will cover the entire Jupiter system within a week. Any Dominion ship that enters the affected space will be unable to raise shields." "And can they counter it?" one of the commanders asked. Miller shook his head. "Not quickly. The quantum principles we uncovered, they're fundamental to how their shield technology works. They'd need to completely redesign their defense systems from the ground up." Admiral Stone stood slowly, his aged face showing both exhaustion and determination. Then we press our advantage. The Defiant has shown us the way forward. Every ship in the fleet will be fitted with a resonance cascade system as soon as possible. Sir, Walker interjected, the Defiant systems were experimental, dangerous. We nearly lost the ship. Then we'll improve them, Stone replied firmly. That's what humans do, isn't it? We learn, we adapt, we overcome. The Dominion thought they had us beaten, but they didn't understand what they were really fighting. He walked to the viewport, staring out at Jupiter's massive form. They saw us as primitives playing with technology we didn't understand. But they forgot something crucial. Sometimes not knowing something is impossible is the first step to making it possible. The room fell silent as his words sank in. Every person there had lost friends, family, entire worlds to the Dominion's aggression. But now, for the first time, they had hope. The Supreme Commander escaped, Walker reminded them. He'll return with an even larger fleet. Let him come, Stone said, turning back to face them. When he does, he'll find more than one human ship waiting for him. The Defiant showed us the way. Now it's time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. As the meeting concluded, Walker found himself back on the Defiant's bridge. The ship was still undergoing repairs, its systems being rebuilt better and stronger than before. Engineers from across the fleet swarmed through its corridors, studying every aspect of the revolutionary design that had changed the course of the war. Captain, Miller called from the doorway. The first set of improvements to the cascade system are ready for review. We think we can increase its range by 40% while reducing power consumption. Walker smiled. Already they were improving on the original design, making it more efficient, more effective. That was humanity's true strength, not just creating something new, but constantly making it better. Get to work, Chief, he ordered. The Dominion will be back, and I want the Defiant ready to show them something new when they arrive. As Miller left, Walker looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Supreme Commander was gathering his forces, planning his revenge. But things would be different next time. The human warship that changed everything had done more than win a battle. It had given humanity back its future. The war wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But now the Dominion would face an enemy they had never truly understood, humans who knew they could win.